All right. So, good afternoon, everybody. This your girl Tiffany coming through live in effect right here on the StreamYard. Now, normally I do my daily Black history every day, but today I'm switching the topic up because we gotta go into details and look into the history um, when it comes down to the police department or law enforcement and Black people. So, just recently, right? Ever since this pandemic, we've been dealing with a lot of police brutality. What ever since we got in America, we've been dealing with law enforcement left to right. But just recently, there was an incident that took place in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and also Lafayette, Louisiana. In Kenosha, Wisconsin, right, the Kenosha police shot a Black man 7 times in the back while he was trying to break up a fight between two women. And according to sources, he was going to the car, at I guess to check on his children, and that's when the police came behind him, grabbed him by the shirt, and shot him 7 times. And he's still in critical condition. So we don't know what the update is as far as right now. And then in Lafayette, Louisiana, there was a Black man, 31 years old, that was killed at a corner store last night. Now, we got a question to ask. When it comes to the police, why are Black people the main enemy? Why are we the number one enemy? The only way I can be able to combat this and come up with a possible answer is to look at the history behind the police department. But before I do that, I want to show some article about the incident that took place yesterday and the day before. So let's look at the incident about Kenosha Police Department. So let me go ahead and show that article. All right here, if you can see it. So as you can see, this come from MSN.com, okay, which is Microsoft News. Kenosha police involved in Jacob Blake shooting weren't wearing body cameras. Now the question is why they was not wearing body cameras when they're required to do so. Let's continue on. The officers involved in shooting Jacob Blake were reportedly not wearing body cameras. They said Blake, 29, is fighting for his life after being shot in the back by police in Kenosha, Wisconsin on Sunday evening. Incident was captured in a video that showed Blake walking around the front of a vehicle parked on the street as 3 officers pointed their weapons at him. One of the officers is seen grabbing the back of Blake's shirt and apparently opened fire at close range. 7 shots rang out, but it is not clear if they were all fired by the same officer. That video is widely circulating on social media, but the shooting would not have been captured on body cameras because none of the department's officers have been fitted with them, according to local media's report. And the Kenosha News reported earlier this year that both Kenosha Police Department and Kenosha County Sheriff Department have yet to equip its officers with body cameras. Kenosha County Board Supervisor Zach Rodriguez told CBS 58 that Blake's shooting shows how crucial it is for the city's police officers to have body cameras. What happening here tonight highlights that we need body cameras for not just our sheriff's deputies, but our city police department as well, Rodriguez told the station. He has been contacted for additional comments. The main reason Kenosha police officers haven't got body cameras yet is due to cost, according to the Kenosha News. Former city alderman Kevin Mathewson passed a resolution for all Kenosha police officers to wear body cameras in 2017, but city official only recently budgeted $200,000 in the 2022 capital improvement plan to get them. So, all right, and then let's skip on down. It says Blake shooting set off protesters in Kenosha on Sunday night, with protesters marching in the streets and facing off against police in riot gear. The unrest prompted Kenosha County to declare a state of emergency and enact a curfew until 7 a.m. on Monday. The Kenosha Police Department have released few details about what led up to the shooting, but said officer had responded to a domestic incident in the 2800 block of 40th Street around 5:10 p.m. on Sunday. Okay, so it says, according to Kenosha News, several witnesses said Blake had tried to break up a fight between two men outside of a home on 40th Street before police attempted to use a taser on him. Blake, who was unarmed, was then shot in the back, the witnesses said. In a news release, police said officer provided immediate medical aid to the person who was shot. Police did not identify Blake, but said he was transported to Forte Hospital in Milwaukee and is in a serious condition. And says they said all the officers involved have been placed on administrative leave. Police said the Wisconsin Department of Justice Division of Criminal Investigation is investigating the shooting with the assistance of the Wisconsin State Patrol and Kenosha County Sheriff's Office. The DCI will turn over its investigative reports to a prosecutor following a complete and thorough investigation. The prosecutor will then review the report and determine whether or not charges should be filed. The Wisconsin Department of Justice has been contacted for comments. All right, let's stop right there. So, this young man or this brother was trying to break up a fight between two men. Okay, there was a fight going on. He was trying to break up the fight. So when the police came, one of the guys was in critical condition, all right, and he got some type of help. But Blake, who happened to be unarmed and who was running to his car, gets shot 7 times. Now, some of you scumbags out there, will make an argument and say that, oh, well, he should never ran from the police. He should have complied with the police. But you don't have an understanding of what he was doing. You forget the fact that he was shot 7 times. So you're blaming the victim for getting shot by these malicious ass cops 7 times. And he was unarmed. But you say, oh, he should never ran. Okay, now what difference does it make if he complied with the police? Let's say he didn't run from the police. Let's say he was doing exactly what he was told to do. Would they have saved him from being shot? Would that really save him from being shot? See, some of you motherfuckers don't think before you say something. Y'all say some stupid ass shit. And then you want to quit to blame your own people. I wouldn't be surprised if you turn into a rat and you rat your own people out for no apparent reason. I wouldn't be surprised. So some of you motherfuckers try to make a justification behind this shit by saying that he was at fault. And that's why he got shot 7 times. When apparently he was an innocent man. He was trying to break up a damn fight. And getting hit by the cops 7 times because he was going into his vehicle and check on his children. But you know what? See, this is why I'm glad that I deal with scholarship. This is why I like to deal with sources, because it's so easy for me to just really go off the emotional tangent. It's really easy for me to be really vocal about things, but I have to be able to guide it through details and information and be able to look at the origin and history so I can be able to bring the two together. And also, it's a clear conscience for me. It helps me to clear my conscience, and it's very therapeutic. Because heaven knows all the shit that's going on with us black folks, especially here in America, one can seriously lose their mind and not give a fuck. And you can't blame us for not giving a fuck, especially when it comes to law enforcement. You can't blame us. We already suffering post-traumatic stress disorder. We already dealing with the epigenetic, transgenerational epigenetics. What else? What more do we need to deal with? We deal with a lot of pressure every day as a people. We already got to deal with this pandemic. And now with this pandemic, all this shit is going on. But let's go to another story. All right. So let's talk about the young man in Louisiana that was shot and killed Saturday night at a corner store in Lafayette. Here we go right here. MSN News. Pillaring, police clash with protesters in Lafayette, Louisiana, fatal shooting. Protesters and police clashes in Lafayette, Louisiana, a day after fatally shot Trayford Pillaring, a 31-year-old black man, outside a convenience store. On Saturday night, protesters blocked traffic as they gathered on Moss Street in Lafayette near a police precinct to protest Pillaring's death, CNN affiliate KATC reported. Police in riot gear gave a 10-minute warning before releasing flares and smoke canister into the crowd of protest, KATC reported. Afterward, interim Lafayette Police Chief Scott Morgan drew a distinction between protesters who organized an event earlier in the day and those who he said choose to be malicious. He said people blocked important roadways and started several fires in grass area, and police observed some throwing fireworks into one of their buildings. Let me say this. Who are we to tell somebody how to express their anger? If you guys study the history about riots, about protests, you know damn good well every protest ain't gonna come with peace. Why do people keep on insinuating that when you protest, you're supposed to do it in a peaceful manner? It ain't gonna come with no damn peace if there's so much, especially if there's injustice done to an individual. You think people gonna really do it in a peaceful manner? You expect for people not to have an anger and retaliate? That's what you expecting? What the fuck do you expect? Yes, of course, people gonna throw shit at the building. Of course, people gonna go out there and loot. That's what they damn do during protests. Ain't nobody just gonna be doing it just peacefully. Ain't nobody finna do that fuck shit. Ain't nobody just gonna be walking around. Everybody ain't gonna walk around, throw their hands up and lay on the ground and all that shit. Ain't nobody gonna be pacifying. Everybody ain't gonna do that shit. So that's gonna be people that's gonna retaliate with anger. That's gonna be people that's gonna tear up some damn shit. They should already know this shit. I hate that with a passion. If you expect that, then maybe you need to, if you want people to be peaceful about shit, you need to start putting more pressure on your law enforcement, addressing the issue, making it more serious. Because I feel like they did not get it when George Floyd was killed. and all the other ones that came before him. They don't get it or they don't care. So if you don't give a fuck, then why should the people give a fuck? But let's continue with this article. Our intent is not going to be just let people disrupt our town. Our intent is not going to be just let people disrupt our town. So then what is it? What's your intent? So what you gonna do about the injustice that's going on in this country? It's gonna have to be some type of disruption. It ain't gonna be no peace. It's gonna have to be something. And put our citizens and our motorists in our neighborhood in danger. People being put in danger every single day. And I'm not justifying that, you know, it's okay to be put in danger, but people are put in danger every single day. Law enforcement put our people in danger every fucking day. Even if you're a law-abiding citizen, you still gonna be put in danger at any given time. You still gonna be targeted. What about those people that abide by the rules? What about those people who are just innocent? We in the midst of chaos. And it says we're going to use those resources that we have in those other agencies. We're going to enforce these laws, he said. The protests came after the ACLU of Louisiana called an independent investigation into Perlerin death, which they said was captured on video. CNN is working to obtain and verify the video. Once again, the video footage have captured a horrific and deadly incident of police violence against a Black person who was brutally killed in front of our eyes. Alana Odoms Herbert, executive director of ACLU of Louisiana, said in a statement. Hebert said the shooting was inappropriate and excessive use of force by the police. You know, they say that every time, but what is done to hold the whole entire police department accountable? What is done to hold the entire law enforcement accountable? What is really being done? Because this, what I'm getting is a bunch of feel-good talk. It feels good and it sounds good, but what is really being done? Let's look at the history of the police department. Okay, let's just get into the history, because see, we gotta go into the origin of how the police were developed in America. Okay, so right here, I'm on insider.com. Protests against police have broken out across the country. Here's how policing has evolved in U.S. since its beginnings in the 1600s. All right. Now it says the modern police force started in the early 1900s, but its origin date back to the American colonies. In the South, in the 1700s, patrol groups were created to stop runaway slaves. Bingo. In the South, in the 1700s, patrol groups were created to stop runaway slaves. Let's continue. In the North, a formal police force was created to control immigrants who were moving into cities in the 1800s. All right, school shooting and terrorist attack forced police departments to change their response to saving countless lives. Actually, they didn't, but okay. But after decades of controversy, which included race riots in the 60s, police departments across the country are facing accusations of brutality and racial profiling. And this is what we witnessed, a racial profiling. All right, so here it is. Down here it says, before a formal police system was put in place, colonies were protected by a night watch dating back to 1630s. The night watch was made up of men who volunteered for a night's worth of work. Sometimes people were put on the watch as a form of punishment for committing a crime. These watchmen, however, were known to sleep and drink while on duty. And goes on to say, the first night watch was founded in Boston in the 1630s and then in New York following suit in the 1650s. During this time period, the wealthiest in the colonies also hired people for protection. The hired for protection were mostly criminals. Those hired for protection were mostly criminals. Now let's look at this. The history of the police in the South differs from other parts of the country because of the prominence of slavery. Did you hear that? The police in the South different from parts of the country because of the prominence of slavery. This is not an exaggeration. This is history. But let's go ahead and continue. The first form of policing in the South was known as a slave patrol, which began in the colonies of Carolina in 1704. The patrol was usually made up of 6 men riding horseback and carrying whips, ropes, and even guns. The group's main duties include chasing and hunting escaped slaves, releasing terror on slave communities to prevent riots, and to keep plantation owners in check, according to Ben Fountain's book, Beautiful Country Burn Again. Hold on. The slave patrols lasted until the Civil War and eventually gave way to the Ku Klux Klan. Yes. The slave patrol lasted until the Civil War and eventually gave way to the Ku Klux Klan. So, after the Civil War came about the development of the Ku Klux Klan. And then let's look at in the North, as more immigrants move into the cities by mid-1800s, citizens look for a more formal way to keep order. Immigrants from Germany and Ireland began settling in cities like Boston and New York between 1820 and 1860. This new group of immigrants clashed with original settlers from England and the Netherlands. As the original settlers argued that the new immigrants were ruining American society, crime began to rise. Oh, but see, for all you talking about the black on black crime, you won't talk about the white on white crime. Here, y'all won't get into the origin about the police colonies, the police up north, and how they were created because there were immigrants from Germany and Ireland, and they were clashing with those who were from England, or were original settlers of England and the Netherlands, the Dutch people. Y'all won't talk about that. But it's so easy to talk about black on black crime, ain't it? I mean, not to say that the issue should not be addressed, but it's so easy to make the reference about that, to stray away from the justice system, right? But let's continue. As the original settler argues that the new immigrants were ruining American society, crime began to rise. The city saw mob, public lewdness, disorderly conduct, and prostitution. But wait a minute, was America built on prostitution, disorderly conduct, and mobs? Was America built on that foundation? When the people that came over here to America, they weren't nothing more than a bunch of mobs and prostitutes and they carry disorderly conduct and all that. That's how America was built. But let's continue on. The cities were ill equipped to keep order, and the night watch was rendered useless. In response, the first official police force was established in Boston in 1838. Shortly after, in 1845, New York began its own force, followed by Chicago, New Orleans, and Cincinnati. By the 1880s, almost every major city in the country had a police force. Almost all of the police forces were structured similarly, and their main duty was to prevent crime and keep order. So, and it says each police department was public and bureaucratic, had full-time policemen, and reported to a governmental authority. It wasn't until the 1850s that the cities started developing detective units whose main job were to investigate crimes. All right. So, the main purpose of the police department, right, according to that source, was to keep things under control. Keep control the corruption, disorderly conduct, and criminal activity. But it's quite interesting when we talk about the South. The South in itself had a whole different agenda. The reason why they had the police force was to keep the slaves from running away. And when it's once they had disappeared during the Civil War, then it came about another group which was called the Ku Klux Klan. Now that kind of gives the reason why Black people are seen as the number one enemy, because of the history of slave rebellion, right? And not only slave rebellion, but also the riots, the corruption that took place because we were trying to fight for our freedom. We were trying to get away from the slave plantation. So we was ruining the American economy by having slave rebellions. That's what it was. So that ideology, even though we're no longer on the plantation or dealing with chattel slavery, the philosophical concept still perpetuates and still carry on to this day. It still carry on and still passed on to this day. So that mind frame is passed from generation to generation to generation. So again, because of who we are and how we've been perceived and how we've been categorized as a people, we are seen as the main enemy. And it ain't about making it easy for the cops to kill our asses. That's not it. That's not what it's about. We were always seen as perceived criminals in the eyes of law enforcement. Our people, especially Black men, have been perceived as criminal in the eye of law enforcement before anybody else. Because of our condition, because the environment that we come from, and because of the history that we had dealt with in this country. So that's goes to show you that they see lack of value in us as a people. When it comes to law enforcement, they see lack of value in us. So we are already a target before we are proven to be innocent. Now, let's look at something else real quick. Now let's go further into more about this history. Let's look at the slave patrols, because that's what I want to focus on, the slave patrols right here. Now check this out. In the southern colonies, slave patrols were created as early as 1704 in Carolina colonies in order to prevent slave rebellions and enslaved people from escaping. Squadrons made up of white volunteers were empowered to use vigilant tactics to enforce laws related to slavery. Members of slave patrols could forcibly enter anyone's home regardless of their race or ethnicity, based on suspicion that they were sheltering people who had escaped bondage. They located and returned enslaved people who had escaped, crushed uprising led by enslaved people, and punished enslaved workers found or believed to have violated plantation rules. As University of Georgia social worker Professor Michael A. Robinson has written, by the time John Adams became the second U.S. president, every state that had not yet abolished slavery had them. Slave patrols were abolished upon abolition of slavery in the 1860s. The vigilant tactics of the slave patrol are reflected in the tactics of the Ku Klux Klan, a white supremacy group established after the abolition of slavery. Various tactics also carry over into the practices of policing following abolition, including practices of surveillance and curfew enforcement. Now, I want to go into the Black Code real fast. But let me go ahead and read this part right here. In the mid-19th century, modern policing began to emerge. Influenced by the British model of policing established in 1829, the first organized police services was established in Boston in 1838, New York in 1844, and Philadelphia in 1854. Early on, police were not respected by the community as corruption was rampant. In the late 19th and 20th century, there were few specialized units in police department. In 1905, the Pennsylvania State Police became the first state police agency established in the United States, as recommended by President Theodore Roosevelt. Anthrax Strike Commission and Governor Samuel Pennypacker. All right, and by 1785. Charleston Guard and Watch had a distinct change of command, uniforms, and sole responsibility for policing, salary, authorized use of force, and a force on preventing crime. All right, so that's a little more origin into more details about the history of the police. So from slave patrols came about the Ku Klux Klan, and then came about the influence of the police. So, again, it is racially targeting and oppressed people or the underprivileged people in this country. Now, we're going to look up the Black Code in a minute, but I want to show you some more information. Now, I don't know how many people are familiar with the Blue Wall of Silence. An ethical analysis by John Klein, City University of New York. Let's read the abstract. The Blue Wall of Silence, the rule that police officers would not testify against each other, has its roots in an important associational virtue, loyalty, which in the context of friendship and familial relation is of central importance. This article seeks to distinguish the worthy roots of the Blue Wall from its frequent corruption in the covering up of serious criminality and attempts to offer criteria for determining when to testify and when to respond in other ways to flaws of fellow police officer. Oh, you think they ain't got no secrets? You think that they don't keep things amongst themselves? Y'all think that police officers are going to really testify against another officer, right? And when they do testify, they give false information. Y'all see, but see, a lot of people are not familiar with that. See, people don't know that there is a blue code, which is called blue wall of silence. That means whatever I did, we keep this between us. We're not going to tell the public. We're not going to disclose that information. It's basically a form of no snitching policy in law enforcement. That's what it is. It's a code that's dealing with no snitching in the law enforcement. See, you guys got to start looking up this stuff, looking up this information. This is why I present the source to you guys so you can do your own diligent research. All right. Now, I'm going to read this first. This first paragraph right here. First two paragraphs. All right. And it says, it's unwritten law in police department that police officers must never testify against their brother officers. Hardly any major police inquiry into police misconduct has failed to mention what is variously known as the blue wall code, curtains, veil, or cocoon of silence or reluctance that has hampered such inquiries or the unsuccessful prior inquiries that have now led to the major public one. Limiting ourselves to a few from the last 3 decades, the Knapp and Mullen commissions in New York, the Christopher commissions in Los Angeles, the Fitzgerald inquiry, and the Wood Royal Commission in Australia, we find they all draw attention not only to the fact of a blue wall, but also to its cohesive and destructive effects. And these not only on the inquiries themselves, but also more generally in the integrity of the police function. Now, although police organizations and their defenders have sometimes proclaimed the blue wall to be imaginary, that's bullshit. Much as members of La Cosa Nostra denies its existence, such denials, if not blatantly political, can be taken seriously on an expression of the very code whose existence is being denied. There has been an effort in the inquiries that have drawn attention to the effects of the blue wall, to decry its existence, to detail its corruptive effects, and to ponder ways in which it might be penetrated, broken down, or dismantled. Yet the blue wall has remained, and despite periodic suggestions to the contrary, shows no sign of going the way of the Berlin Wall. It has perpetuated itself from generation to generation of police officers, and though occasionally breached, it has usually been quickly repaired. My purpose on this occasion is not to provide in any serious social scientific sense a recently textured characterization of the blue wall, a sociological explanation of its origins and persistent, or even an empirical analysis of why attempts to break it down have failed, except as an adjunct to an ethical or normative inquiry into its character and status. You will find here no surveys, no interview data, no statistics or regression analysis, although I hope that whatever empirical claims are presupposed by what I say will be reasonably accurate, or at least intuitively plausible. My purpose rather is to offer a normative understanding of why it might be that police officers defend what they do, to appraise the rationalities that inform the practices that are constitutive of the blue wall, and to provide some normative suggestions about what might need to be done by way of changing those practices. All right. So That gives you the basic outline of what the whole purpose of this article is about. Okay. So let me see if I can find something else on here that kind of like go into details. All right. So let's look down here real quick. Okay. It says codes of silence are usually thought as closet for the skeletal remains of misdeeds, but we construe them too narrowly if we think of them only in that way. A family may wish to conceal from some larger public view its poverty, misfortune, and other parts of its identity, along with uh the the realization of its members. Uh, common thought, common though it is to think of the code of silence exclusively as concealment or wrongdoing, since this is the version of perversion that grabs the headlines. What really drives it is a perception of what the family's interests require, given the kind of association that it is, given the perception of those outside as being threatened or at least capable of damaging in a significant way. Should certain things about it become more widely known, whatever status one may accord it, the interest and reputation may be damaged by many more things than unwillingness to disclose the misdeeds of its members. So basically, it's about reputation. That's what it's really about. That's the purpose of the blue wall, to keep the information, the important piece of information, concealed, so that way one would not lose their status or reputation. All right. So, and this is called The Wall of Silence, right? And it was written in 2001. Yeah, it was written in 2001. There you go, right here. Let's see. Okay. So I have a book right here, a PDF. It's called Police State: How American Cops Get Away with Murder. Okay, so let's look at something. Let's look at an example as we go down. Okay, let me find a good example on this book. Okay, hold on. Let me find a good example. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna put up the book. It's called Police States: How Cops Get Away with Murder. Jerry Spencer. Okay. So you can look that up yourself. Oops. Yep, you can find this book out if you want to learn more about how the police get away with that. So I really don't have that much time left on here. So um, and then let me show you another PDF. It's called Police Community Relation. All right. All right, so police community relation deals with how the community interacts with the police and how they, the type of relationship they have with the police officer or whatnot. So let's see what this one is talking about. Basically, it says police in any democratic society are faced with inescapable dilemma. Their roles require that they adequately balance the legal authority they have been granted by public through government with their responsibility to protect individual rights and contribute to public safety. Police officers are a walking symbol of government authority. They have the power to stop, detain, question, arrest, and even use deadly physical force when necessary. At the same time, police have to be responsive to the wishes of the public. They must carry out complex tasks while respecting important legal and constitutional protection. The police are occasionally called upon to enforce unpopular laws while attempting to foster or maintain public support. How the police balance these concerns often determines the quality of the relationship they have with the public. The action of individual police officers, the use of excessive force or policies enact by department that emphasize the cohesive legal authority of the police. Zero tolerant policing may jeopardize public satisfaction. In addition, the quality of police community relation often contributes to the ability of the police to accomplish goals of public safety. When the public is satisfied with and has confidence in the police, they are more likely to contribute information that may assist the police in solving crimes. When community residents trust the police, keyword trust, they are willing to work collaboratively with the police to make improvements to neighborhoods. Therefore, there are very real and practical concerns that should serve to encourage police departments to work on improving the relationship they have with local communities. Keyword trust. And the problem is a lot of our people don't trust the police department, which is why they don't really collaborate with them, because it's a lack of trust. Why would I trust a people that's constantly killing my people? You got more black women that's afraid to call the police now because of all this killing. And black women getting killed by the cops too. So where do we stand? Okay. All right, so I want to show y'all another PDF. It's called The War on The War on Cops. Heather McDonald. Okay. Let's see what this was written in 2016. All right. Those are the table of contents. The introduction. Let's look at the introduction real quick. I ain't gonna read all of it. It says the police and revolution, crime, and the anti-law enforcement movement. As the most anti-law enforcement administration in memory draws to a close, crime is shooting up in the cities across the United States. Homicide in the country 50 largest cities rose nearly 17% in 2015, the greatest surge in the fatal violence in a quarter century, reports the Washington Post. Milwaukee was experiencing its deadliest year in a decade. Homicides in Baltimore was at their highest per capita rate ever by mid-November. 50 killings per 100,000 residents. Crime is the worst I ever seen it, said St. Louis Alderman Joe Vaccaro at a city hall hearing in May of 2015. President Obama himself conceded that gun violence and homicide has spiked, and in some cases they spiked significantly. All right, so anyways, that's this book right here. It deals with the problems with public versus law enforcement. So if you want to look that book up, you can look it up on your own term right here. Okay. And for all who talk about black on black violence, here's the information dealing with the discourse between the police and public regarding to that. So here it is. That it was written on May 2015. All right. Okay. So, anyways, that's all I have to say for today. Maybe later on I'll do the daily black history, but as of right now, I just had to address that. And again, this is something that I have to be able to deal with from a scholarship standpoint, academic standpoint, and not just an emotional standpoint. Although that it does anger me as a black woman to, know that my race is the number one enemy in America when it comes to police brutality, especially black men, because I have black men in my family, especially on my father's side. There are more black men than there are women. So to hear about this all the time, it becomes frustrating, it becomes heartbreaking, it becomes sad. And you at the point you don't know, you just want to lose your mind. And you want to know why people turn into depression, why people turn to drugs, alcohol, and all that, because they cannot tolerate it. How much longer can you deal with being a second class citizen, if you will, being downgraded, being thrown under the bus? And then you want to know, why do we not trust the law enforcement? We can't trust the law enforcement. We can't really have a conversation with them. Now, of course, it's like a catch-22 when it comes to law enforcement, because you're going to still need them. And the reason why I say you're going to still need them, because we don't have a vigilant established in our community, meaning that we don't have top security in our community. We don't have our own police force. So we have to deal with the law enforcement. Especially when it comes to a serious emergency, you will have no choice. So it's a catch-22. It's like you don't want to deal with them, but you have to deal with them. But how do you go about dealing with them without being targeted or being identified as a criminal? And this go back to what Megan Thee Stallion was saying. She was stating why she didn't call the cops, or why she didn't tell the police about Tory Lane when he was shooting her in the feet. When he shot her in her feet, or her foot rather. She basically said that if I told the police that us niggas, this is her word, us niggas got a gun in the car, we all would have got killed. If I was to say to the cops, hey, we got a gun in the car, officer, then that's when the police officer would strip everybody down and search everyone. And then that's when everybody would have got hit. She already done got hit in the foot. She don't want to get killed by the cops, because she's seeing that the cops is killing both black men and women. So she said, okay, I got to play it smart. I got to be smooth about this. Okay, I got to be calm and collected, even though I'm nervous and I'm scared, because I'm already scared of the fact that this motherfucker done shot me. But now the helicopter's all over me, and the cops is all aggressive, all up in our faces and shit. So we got to play it cool. So I'm not going to say too much right now. I'm just going to keep my mouth closed. I'm not going to speak on that. I'm not going to tell the officer what he did. Now, Tory Lanez is technically from Canada, okay? But he's been in the U.S. for a while. So what she was trying to do, she was trying to protect him and everybody else from being targeted, from being killed. Now, they ain't say where that Kylie Jenner bitch was at. We don't know where that Kylie Jenner bitch was, and we don't give a fuck. But Megan was trying to protect herself and her own people. That's why she didn't want to tell. But she said something because she was under pressure and she was pushed to say something about it. But she didn't want to tell on that boy. Did you think she really wanted to say something about being shot by a black man? No. Even though that he did that intentionally, she was trying to spare his life. She was trying to make sure that he doesn't get hurt. See, y'all don't understand the context of all this. And that's why I give my special shout out to Bun B, because Bun B explained it the best. That black women have always had the back of black men, especially when it came to law enforcement. Black women have always tried to protect black men from the law enforcement. Anyways, thank you guys for tuning in, watching. With that being said, you all have a wonderful day. And if you like this video, you can go ahead and share this video on Facebook. And also make sure you check out my YouTube channel, subscribe, and hit the notification bell whenever I come on. But until then, y'all have a good one. And later on, I'll go back to dealing with my daily Black history. But this needs to be talked about. And this conversation is not going to die. Race relations is going to always be discussed. Police brutality is going to always be discussed. So that's something that we got to get used to as a people, whether we like it or not. It is what it is. All right. So anyways, I will catch you guys later. Take it easy. Deuces. Thank you. Until next time. All righty.